And that's the context out of which do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly emerges. It makes those phrases even more powerful when we realize that Micah said them from a particular moment, and we still experience reflections of that same particularity in our lives and our world today. Hi, everybody. I'm Reverend Jim Keat, Riverside's digital minister.
And I'm Reverend Adriene Thorne, Riverside Senior Minister. And this is The Word Made Fresh.
The Word Made Fresh is a weekly narrative lectionary resource where we look at upcoming lectionary passages, talk about them, offer ideas for preaching, Bible study, or if you're just someone who really loves this book and wants to learn a little more about it, this is the video for you. So, Reverend Thorne, today we are up to Micah. What's going on in Micah? What parts of Micah does the narrative lectionary give us? And just how should we talk about this particular passage?
Well, these are some excerpts from Micah. So we get a little pastiche of early Micah, middle Micah, and of course the famous verse from Micah, to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God. I would actually love to hear from you what you're thinking, because as I dug into this text in preparation for today, one of the things that really stood out for me was what one commentator said about the very first word, which is woe. W-O-E, not like whoa, but in a way, kind of woe, because Micah is, bringing it. He's not your comfort prophet. He's kind of gloom and doom and lots of warning, and I'm wondering what you're thinking about that as you're prepping, because you're going to be preaching this coming Sunday.
This one's me on Sunday. Yeah, this passage is always interesting, the variety of passages, and I think to me there's always the sense that people most often know Micah for two of these little pastiches that are offered, the infamous Micah 6:8, which is known for lots of great reasons, but then that other one from Micah 5 is where we get the Bethlehem imagery of Christ's birth from Bethlehem, which was Micah thinking of that in that particular way, or are we looking at a certain lens to read what's behind us through a different kind of narrative? Both are valid conversations, but that's really all we ever know of Micah. We think of him in that one obscure, Bethlehem prophecy, and then Micah 6:8. But I think there's the sense of, well, who was this guy and what was he doing? And that's where just understanding the minor prophets as an entity, I think, becomes a unique role, particularly when we're looking at the narrative lectionary and how this fits with a larger story. So Micah, I find it interesting. He came from a smaller town. He wasn't in the big city of Jerusalem. He's a contemporary of Isaiah, but Isaiah was more connected to the politics of Jerusalem, whereas Micah was from more of a rural space. And what I love already is that alone tells us that God works in various ways, speaks through different types of people, not just the ones who are at the city center, but also the ones who are in, middle America, rural life as well. Although, Micah wasn't in America, but you know what I'm saying. So just, I think, framing it to know who he is, where he is, and putting him in, a whole lived experience rather than just a couple verses we like to pull out of there. And then, we see Micah doing exactly that, doing what often the prophets did of speaking woe, saying judgment's coming, but then also offering ways to repent and what we need to turn and return ourselves to. We call them minor prophets, but he still has a pretty major message, I like to think.
He does have a major message, and I think it could be helpful to share, especially for those who may not be preaching, but just interested in this book, why we call them minor prophets. Books. I think they're just shorter books. So contemporary of Isaiah, as you said, but just has a shorter book. But I think your point about still having a major message is important. I just want to leave people with this notion that they're not minor because what they said didn't matter. I also thought what you said about him not being necessarily connected to the city center, even though he's bringing that message from the city center, that's not where he grew up and not where he lived. The connection you made between that and middle America, rural, small towns, I think is really powerful for clergy to think about. And I wonder if you might say something about that, because a lot of us, a lot of our folk, the people that we align ourselves with, progressive people, we tend to live in cities and tend to live on the coast. And I think especially as we're close to, just out of these midterm elections, it's important for us to be thinking about people in parts of the country that we might not preach to or think about. That's maybe a bit of a rub for us. And so I wonder if you could say something maybe.
Well, maybe I feel that a bit autobiographically right now because I'm no longer in the city center of New York. I'm in, small town Michigan in the Midwest, where we have all these things happening with our governor's election, Gretchen Whitmer versus Tudor Dixon, Trump called Whitmer that woman and Tudor Dixon is the one he's endorsed. So it's that world and that reality. And I can't tell you how many Trump signs I see when I'm walking through town or driving through the countryside.
She's also that woman that someone tried to kidnap.
That too, yes. I
Yes.
am proud to have her as my governor, and am yeah. But how do you then show up when it's not just everyone leaning into that same progressive message? When it's easy to be drawn to these city centers where there is maybe more of a progressive community located, but then how do you still maybe even in some ways feel even more called and compelled to lean into these progressive messages and hope and love when that's not the water everyone around you is swimming in? When suddenly welcoming a queer person is seen as odd. Like I can count the number of pride flags in my small town here in Michigan, and I call them all my best friends whenever I go on a run. But what does it mean to then do these big prophetic actions that might seem small because there's only a few of us doing it, but it actually carries, I would say, even greater weight. So to the clergy in Middle America, smaller towns, rural spaces where you don't have that progressive collective, I think that's where the minor prophet, minor in number, in quantity, but major in depth and in message, really leans in. And we need these progressive voices in these Middle America spaces more than ever, because there are queer people, trans people, women, people of color, everyone who has been pushed to the margins by those white, straight, cis voices. And that more than ever is where we need advocacy and empathy and hope and love. So yeah, Middle America, we're called to be prophets. Let's do it.
Let's do it. And I guess the other thing I would add with my pastoral care hat on is I think also for us progressive preachers in small towns and in middle America, in places where we might not be the dominant folk, that there might be things for us to learn as well. So Micah's coming from that place with this prophetic voice, and I think that there might be a turn for us in that too. That there might be something in these places that's powerful, instructive, that we could learn from. And I think that can be a place that we sometimes struggle with or get away from. Just thinking in our comfort with the way we vote or the way we move in the world, that there's nothing that a person like Micah, who comes from a place that he comes from, could possibly have for us. And so I think it's a good check for us as well. What do you think about that?
I think, it's where Micah's infamous trio of do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly are so essential everywhere we go. That justice work, is essential in every space we find ourselves, especially in maybe these small town Midwest spaces. But you have to still love kindness. You have to be a kind person. You have to walk humbly, not arrogantly, not proudly, not I'm better than you because I've evolved in my thinking. But how do we still have all of our justice work done with kindness, with humility? Otherwise, what sort of method is our message wrapped up in? It's one thing to be working for justice, but to be doing it in an oppressive way? No. It all needs to be done justly.
Yeah, and kindly. I love that you
Yeah.
reference kind. A congregant gave me a mug once that said, "Of all the things we could be in the world, why don't we choose kindness?" And I just love that. I think it's a good religion. It's a good path to follow if you don't know what
Yeah.
else to do. Kindness will never steer you wrong. Um,
Yeah.
so I heard you say that you had some surprises for us on the 13th, and I know you don't want to give them away, but is there any kind of little taste that you might give those who are writing sermons away, maybe into your creative process, or what's bubbling for you as you prepare to put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard?
for this passage in particular, I think it is partly just looking at what is it we know about Micah, or think we know, and that's often the Micah 6:8. And so I don't think we shy away from that, especially this is a time to reinforce such a strong, powerful message that Micah offers. But then how do we stretch that out to understand the broader context that it comes from? It's one thing to just see do justice, love kindness, walk humbly as a nice phrase, but that came from somewhere. That grew out of a particular context. And so if we can learn about that, what does that then teach us about how it might be received in our space today? So here's one little bit on that from a commentary I've been reading, talking about the context of Micah, saying that it was a time when wealthy landowners would lie awake at night devising schemes to increase their property at the expense of the small farmer. So big business is trying to take over small business. Women and young children are evicted from their homes. Political leaders are the cannibals who destroy and then devour those over whom they have power. They engage in building projects in Jerusalem that are executed with exploitation of labor at the cost of human lives. And the courts where those oppressed should have a chance are infected with bribery. So it's this context where the big business was just taking over the small ones. The politicians were, in various spaces of corruption. The courts didn't seem to be upholding the justice that those thought they deserved. And Micah was a prophet over the course of 3 different kings. So he saw the rise and fall of different, heads of state, which makes me think a lot of what we've been living with over the past few years here in America, with the rise and fall and the shift of political leaders and the ways in which, Elon Musk is just going to buy Twitter and Jeff Bezos is going to send us all to Mars rather than caring for this planet, and all the ways in which we see those realities still happening in our today. And that's the context out of which do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly emerges. It makes those phrases even more powerful when we realize that Micah said them from a particular moment, and we still experience reflections of that same particularity in our lives and our world today.
Yeah, that's a great word, Reverend Jim. I love it. And I'm thinking about what you're saying about heads of state, and I think Micah might support this. It seems like regardless of who's in power, what party, what person, regardless, they are still eating the people's flesh.
Yeah.
I think there's some place in the text that says that there is not a party or a king or a ruler that will save them. Both the secular leaders and the spiritual leaders, they're all plotting to extract what they can from the people.
Yeah.
And then here comes Micah. So I'm just looking forward to hearing what you'll bring. You didn't share any of your creativity, but I'm looking forward to the surprises. So hopefully folks will tune in and see what you've got cooked up. I've seen you preach before, and I know you've loved visuals. So I'm just looking forward to seeing what you bring. I'm sure it's going to be a blessing to the community.
There might be a little bit of a full body experience we're all invited to participate in, one that I guarantee is familiar to us all, but hopefully I can flip that in a slightly different way. And then I'll be holding up a big sign as I tell the story of Rainbow Man, and we explore. The sermon's going to be called "That's What It's All About." So that might give some hints at where some of this is going. And
Yeah, I have a picture in my head. I'm looking forward to it.
all right. Well, if anyone listening, watching has questions about Micah, the minor prophets, the narrative lectionary, please share a comment below. Get a hold of us however you can. We would love to stay in touch and know how this resource, other resources can best serve you in your ministry, your life, your faith, the work we're all called to do. And thank you for joining us for another episode. We'll be back next week. I think the next one we're going to be recording it together in the same physical space because I'm going to be in New York. So that will be a very fun episode. But until then, go read some minor prophets because they got something major to say. And we'll talk with you again next time.
Bye.